Thanks for coming along to my talk. My name's Colin Eberhardt. I'm the CTO of ScotLogic. We're a UK-based software consultancy. If you want to find out anything more about us, we've got a stand upstairs. But for now, I'm going to be talking about AI. For many of us, AI is transformational, but I guess probably few of us would agree that the transformation has actually happened just yet. And I want to talk about some of the challenges that are standing in the way of genuine transformation with AI. Now, I know it's kind of standard practice with most talks to give a brief history of the subject. The speaker that was on here previously just did that, so I'm not going to do the same. Things are moving so quickly, I'm going to give you a brief history of the last 4 weeks of AI. It's moving that quickly. Yeah, I'm going to keep it light-hearted. I know we've got lunch next. So we'll start with about 3 weeks ago, Microsoft Build Conference, where they declared the age of AI agents and the agentic web. They're looking at a future where the web will be read more by AI agents than human beings. That's pretty cool, I guess. Then there was this. It was like a wedding photo between Johnny Ive and Sam Altman. And Sam is basically looking at you and saying, trust me with your data, trust me with your lives, trust me with your future. Interesting. Google I/O, they announced so many things that it would take the best part of an hour to go through them all. But one that stood out to me was the VO3 model. It's a new video rendering model that's amazing. It can synchronize voice with human faces. I mean, it takes AI video generation completely to another level. Then Apple, just a few weeks back, released a paper on the illusion of thinking, where they were basically debunking, to a certain extent, the ability of these AI models to actually reason. And then a few days later, they had the Apple Developer Conference where they announced liquid glass. Okay, interesting. Then just a few days later, Perplexity released a paper on the illusion of thinking that was co-authored by Claude Opus. So it was co-authored by their AI model, where they debunked the debunking of reasoning, which was interesting. Sam Altman again, he published a paper on the gentle singularity. What he's describing here is his belief that the transition to AI is not going to be a flash event. It's not going to be a hard bump. It's going to be a gradual transition, and it's already happening. Trust me with your data, trust me with your lives, trust me with the future. That's Sam's mission. Also, Meta purchased Scale AI. Scale AI were a company that does labeling of data, and they were fairly instrumental in the development of the GPT series of models. So that was an important acquisition and a clear statement from Meta that they are really getting into the AI game. And then this happened. This guy, Keir Starmer, said that, earlier in the year, he said he is going to mainline AI into the veins of this nation. Interesting use of words. Just last week, he said that we are going to be AI makers rather than AI takers. And that chap on his left looked really quite pleased with that comment, for obvious reasons. And that's the last 4 weeks in AI, or at least the bits I can remember. Interspersed amongst all those interesting things were lots of model releases, lots of improvements to various products and so on. This thing's moving at an incredible pace, and it's pretty much a full-time job to keep up. The narrative has shifted from artificial and general intelligence. That's really so last year. We're now talking about artificial superintelligence. You can't talk about AI anymore. That's boring. You've got to talk about agentic AI. You can't talk about AI-assisted software development. It's all vibe coding these days. You know, things are moving at a tremendous pace. I do want to jump back to this particular one. I think this is an interesting point. So as I mentioned, Apple debunked the capability of these models to genuinely perform reasoning tasks by setting it the challenge of solving the Tower of Hanoi puzzle, a fairly simple yet complicated at the same time logical problem. Now, personally, my thoughts on the subject. I don't think artificial intelligence at the moment, or generative AI models, are intelligent. I don't think they think the way that we think. I don't think they can perform reasoning. They are effectively next token guessers. They are not intelligent creations. However, there's a big but here. Their ability to imitate intelligence is so good that in a number of applications, you can actually use them in place of genuine intelligence. They are sufficiently good at mimicking intelligence that they can practically be used for tasks that require intelligence. And it's exactly the same for reasoning. I don't think they can genuinely reason, but they are sufficiently good at mimicking reasoning that they can, for all practical purposes, be used for reasoning tasks. If it walks like a duck, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, call it a duck. However, has AI changed my life? That's a question I ask myself quite often. I mean, as I said, the last 4 weeks, things have gone crazy, and the next 4 weeks are going to be equally crazy. But when I turn around and look at my life, and my job is largely the same as it was a year ago. My personal life isn't all that different. I mean, at the moment, I can pick up tools, and I can, I come from an engineering background. I can pick up tools and I can create greenfield applications at a phenomenal pace. But the day job, the enterprise sort of software development, that's largely the same. In my personal life, things that claim to be intelligent, whether it's Siri or Alexa, are still so dumb. The revolution hasn't happened. Also, benchmarks. Benchmarks have been smashed. Don't bother looking at this benchmark. They're all boring. They all look the same. They're all a bunch of dots that start at the bottom left and go up to the top right, and you can guarantee that the x-axis is very, very short. They all look exactly the same. We have PhD-level intelligence across a whole manner of different fields. The models are amazing. They're getting more amazing, but they're already amazing. What we're missing is the products. That's the problem. Products that connect technology to people and enrich our lives. I don't bother looking at benchmarks anymore. It's the products that I want. Now, I don't mean to sound negative. I probably sound really quite negative already. This is honestly the most exciting technology that I've seen in the past decade, if not longer. But the transformation, the disruption is something this is part of the problem. Disruptive technology isn't technology that you can just simply adopt. Disruptive technology requires quite a lot of personal change and societal change. The bigger the potential of the technology, the more disruptive it is, the harder it is to adapt to capitalize on that technology. So I want to have a look at just a few of the specifics, a couple of things that I don't think are talked about enough, which for me help you understand why this is such a difficult technology to adopt. Now, this is the first one. You've probably heard about hallucinations. They're quite a well-known topic. The tendency of these models to effectively make stuff up. And the problem is they make stuff up in such a way that it's really quite believable, which is a challenge. However, I think there's an even deeper problem, which causes all kinds of adoption-related issues, and that's that large language models don't know what they don't know. They don't have an understanding of themselves. And you've probably encountered this a number of times in your own use of this technology, but you might not have recognized it as such. So what I want to do is give you a very, very simple example of this in practice. Now, Lego. I was actually doing some Lego because I'm still a big kid. And I took a photo of the Lego that I was using and said, hey, ChatGPT, what could I make with this Lego? A great example of a multimodal AI system. And it came back and said, hey, from these pieces I can see you could perhaps make a small starship or a mech or a robot. That's really smart. I mean, to be able to determine from that picture and make some quite intelligent sort of conclusions about what could be made. That's fantastic. So yeah, I'm a geek. I said, yeah, make me a starfighter. I'd like a starfighter. So it rendered that image. Amazing. Isn't that, yeah, again, it feels smart. It feels intelligent. So the next thing I did was say, okay, I'd like to build that. Can you give me some instructions? That's what we got. Quite literally. Base construction, 4x8 plates, stick some 1x2, 2x2 bricks on top. Hey, presto, you have a spaceship. I mean, the gap between the image that it rendered and the spaceship that it created is laughable. But there was nothing in the narrative with ChatGPT that even hinted that it couldn't possibly undertake this task. I went a step further and said, how do you think you performed on that task? How good? Accurate? Yeah, spelling mistake. Do you think your instructions are? And it went, yeah, 70 to 80% accurate. I'd give it a much lower score than that. And this is the problem. This is the problem. are completely lacking in an understanding of their own limitations. You can give them a trivial task that is well within their capability, and they will knock it out of the park. You can give them a modestly challenging task, and they might struggle with it. You can give them something which is completely ludicrous, and they will tackle each one of those tasks with the same level of confidence because they simply have a complete lack of understanding of what they are capable of. And that is a pretty fundamental issue with these. Moving on to something else. Another completely different limitation, which is less about the models and more about the product. Something that I call the blinking cursor problem. So in this AI that we have a general purpose human language model, PhD level, highly versatile, super accurate, super accessible, not accurate, wrong words. One of the most amazing types of computing that we've ever created. So how do we present this to the user? What can I help you with? I don't know, ChatGPT. Can you help me build some Lego? Perhaps not. What do you want to know? I don't know, Perplexity. Why is ChatGPT so bad at Lego? I'd like to know that. Claude, yeah, hey, good afternoon. How can Claude help you today? I don't know. So we have a highly versatile tool. It's a linguist, a mathematician, a poet, a researcher. It can do all of these different things. It can also hallucinate. It's unaware of its own capabilities. And we hide all of that behind a simple text box. There isn't even the mildest hint of what it can do or a hint at what it cannot do. It's incredible. It reminds me of the very first computer that I ever used, showing my age here. This is the BBC Micro. It's the blinking cursor. The BBC Micro and computers of that age did very little to offer up any suggestion of what they could do or what they couldn't do. And for me, and as someone who's coming from an engineering background, or at least at that point I was, starting on my journey, that invited exploration. But to be honest, for most people, it creates confusion. When people don't know what a computer system can do, more often than not, they will leave it be. And that's a really big problem that we have with AI at the moment. Also, this slide's a little bit jumbled, but I've been talking about the weaknesses, like hallucination, lack of self-awareness. Sometimes you discover some amazing hidden strengths, again, hidden behind that empty text box. One of the things that I've found, and some of you have probably used this, is a thing I call role reversal. I've been using ChatGPT to help me write software requirements because software requirements are boring. And rather than me spoon-feed ChatGPT with my ideas for the particular requirements, I ask it to take on a particular role. I ask it to turn the tables, take on the role of a business analyst, engage me in a conversation, ask me questions. And the fun thing is, you can do this in voice mode. I can walk my dog while writing software requirements, or at least walk my dog while talking to ChatGPT. As a business analyst, I can get home from my dog walk, and I can say, that conversation we've just had, write it up as a markdown document. I can then take that markdown document and put it in things like Bolt or VNaught, and I can get it to very accurately and very quickly build me an application. That's pretty incredible. But the whole role reversal, that's an entirely hidden strength of these systems. There's nothing to suggest they can do that. Funnily enough, I was having a chat with someone last night about some of these problems. And this guy said to me, have you tried this particular prompting technique where rather than asking it a question directly, you ask it a question and then tell it to ask you 4 or 5 clarifying questions. And he found that you get a much better response. And that's interesting. It's because thinking about that a little bit more deeply, we can ask really quite simple questions of other human beings because we have a lot of shared understanding and shared context. These models have very limited understanding of us, our environment, and shared context. And that's why his little prompting trick of getting it to ask clarifying questions creates more of a context that will likely result in a better output. And again, it's fascinating, but every single one of these feels like some kind of, secret trick that you have to learn, which is such a weird way to work with technology. So yeah, I see this very much as a transformation problem. So these two problems, a sort of PhD level physicist that can't tell you it's no good at Lego, an interface that's simple but lacks any suggestion of capabilities. These are just illustrations of the challenges involved in adopting this particular transformational technology. AI adoption isn't going to be like adopting the smartphone. I don't know if any of you have watched sort of the old Apple keynotes. I think they're fantastic. I love watching Steve Jobs on stage. And one of the most memorable keynotes was his introduction of the smartphone. And he teased the audience by saying, we're releasing a music player, an internet communicator, and a phone. And he kept repeating those words over and over again and said, you get the joke, it's all three in one device. Now it's interesting. Each one of those devices were entirely familiar to everyone in the audience. Bundling them together into a single device created an amazing, versatile device that was immediately familiar to everyone in the audience. And that's why smartphone adoption went from 0 to millions of units sold in a very short space of time. That's because there was a familiarity there. Transformational technology is technology that we've simply not seen before, and that's what makes adopting it really quite hard. I personally think it's not going to take a year or 2 years. I know a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, that agentic use across the enterprise will be happening next year. I honestly don't believe that. I think it's going to take 5 years or maybe even a decade to really, truly adopt this technology in its fullest sense. So AI has far-reaching impacts. It presents risks and opportunities in equal measure, and I think any business needs to start looking at it from both perspectives. It will impact your offerings, your products, your services. It will impact your people. AI, this is where I want to be careful. I don't think AI will take people's jobs. I think it will reshape their roles. And I think that's a less scary way of talking to people about it. If you talk about AI taking jobs, that immediately makes people think job loss. If you talk about AI reshaping a role, we can adapt as well. We can transform ourselves to fit into the new role. It will also impact operations, the processes that make our business tick. And anyone in any organization should be keeping an eye on the risks and the opportunities in each of these areas, but also bearing in mind that it will change really quite quickly. You can't do this and then spend the next couple of years working away. You really have to revisit this quite often. But for the purposes of this talk, I want to focus on just one aspect of the problem, and that's what I'd consider to be the readiness problem. And we talked about it in the keynote. When we first formed the AI Readiness SIG, I spoke to a number of the FINOS member organizations, and almost all of them had exactly the same challenge. It was simply getting access to these tools, simply getting it into the hands of their developers or their salespeople or anyone else. And also looking outside of financial services, where you might have a more sort of permissive environment. That doesn't necessarily mean people are adopting it. So I know that within financial services, there are various governance regulatory issues that get in the way. There are similar challenges throughout almost all lines of business. And that's why we set up the AI Readiness SIG. As it says, the goal is to develop a framework that manages the onboarding, development, running of AI-based systems. So this is about enabling, getting people started. And as we announced earlier today, I think we've made a fantastic amount of progress. 34 risks and mitigations, 33,000 words, lots of framework mappings, rapidly developed over a few months. And we've got all sorts of future plans as well. But as a bit of a parting thought, putting technology into people's hands is very much the first step. But as I detailed before, this is a surprisingly challenging technology to adopt. I'll give you some concrete examples. I'm an engineer. There's probably some engineers in this room. As a developer, how carefully do I need to critique the output of these AI models? Should I be thinking AI first, or should I be writing the code and using AI to write the unit tests, for example? How big are the tasks I should be offloading to the AI? Probably not too big, if you take my Lego example. What information does the AI system need to succeed? And those are just a few questions. I've got another 10 or 20 similar questions that I don't have good answers to. And similar questions are apparent in every field that's using AI, whether it's legal, copywriting, editing. everyone has the same sorts of questions. And unfortunately, there aren't terribly good answers, because more often than not, the answer is, it depends. So in order to tackle that, what we need to do is we need to let people learn these tools, experiment, use them within safe spaces, use them within sandboxes. They should be experimenting so that they can start to better understand the strengths and weaknesses of the AI models, because the AI models are not going to declare their strengths and weaknesses to you, as we've already seen. So technology transformation isn't just a technology problem, it's very much a human problem as well. So finally, if you're not using AI on a daily basis, you really should be. You should be learning about these tools as well. If you're not encouraging your teams to use AI on a daily basis, you should be. I'm not going to pretend that just using it is going to solve all of your problems, but it will at least help you get a better understanding of what those problems are. And it will also start you on your journey. This is a very rapidly evolving, hard to describe, hard to understand, wonderful, surprising, and sometimes infuriating technology. And experience is the only way to get a feel for it. So as I said, AI adoption is a transformation problem, and we have to be prepared to learn, experiment, and ultimately adapt. Thank you very much.